Hey guys, we got to talk about student debt because that is going to be a major hot button coming through this particular administration and election cycle. And it's already starting out the way that nobody really wants it to. Joe Biden is now coming back and saying that he wants to backtrack on what he was saying while he was trying to get himself elected by the progressives out there. And Elizabeth Warren is coming out and saying, okay, well, we need to pump $50,000 worth of debt forgiveness into the hands of people who, of course, voted for us because we promised them we were going to give them $50,000 worth of student debt relief. And I mean, that's all well and good because you know what Warren's going to do with all that money. That is going to be a major giveaway to their rich little donors. If you've got $50,000 worth of student debt, you went to a prestigious school and had a little bit of money going in. Like, I'm not talking about the money that your parents are coming back and paying for it out of pocket, but if you've got $50,000 worth of debt, you had money coming in already. I hate to come back out and say this, but you either got really, really lucky in getting accepted into one of the most prestigious schools among people who have a whole bunch of money and parents who donate a bunch of money to the schools, or you already had a bunch of money. So that really is a big giveaway to some of their rich crony friends. But Biden is still sticking with the $10,000 thing. I don't think he's going to do it because upward mobility really never helps Democrats as much as they come out and say it. And once again, as with all establishment politicians at this point, if they actually fix the problem, they have nothing to run on the next time. The next election cycle will be very, very devoid of political ads if they actually fix some of the problems here. But the student debt thing is something we actually do need to look at and possibly address coming out of here because it is spiraling up out of control. Now, I am of the mind that we really should go back and pay the loans that we promised out to pay. And I will stick with that because I don't think forgiveness is the answer. First off, that's all going to go right down to the taxpayers' hands. And most of you who are going to wind up getting your relief done are going to get taxed more out of it. Not only that, keep in mind, and this is the same thing I said about the stimulus, nothing comes out of the government for free without having a hook buried into it. And guess what? They're going to count that as income. They're not going to tell you they're going to count that as income, but they are going to count that as income. So once you get your student debt forgiven, you are going to get screwed royally on next year's taxes. So keep that in mind. But given the fact that there is $1.7 trillion in student loan debt and a bunch of people are struggling with this, they can't make any of the payments, they can't get caught up with it, they can't get past the interest rate off of this, we do need to sit back and address it because it is holding down the millennial generation right now, who has been doubly screwed with an economic crash, first when they're coming into the workforce, when they're on the older end, and now with the commie coup knocking out large swaths of the economy and them losing a lot of their jobs again. So I've thought about this for a long time. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that a student debt forgiveness would not benefit me because I am one of those who's struggling. If they went out and got rid of $10,000 worth of student debt, I would probably be one of the people who benefited from that on paper. Now, of course, I would get slapped in the ass on taxes right away, and that's going to be one of the big things that comes back out of that. Not only do I want to make sure that I pay my part and not have the government come back down and do that, I don't want to pay the taxes back in for that because that is counted as income. But taking this a little bit further, there is a solution, I think, buried in there, and I'm going to offer what I would do if I was elected to the presidency about the student loan crisis, because I would be one of the first people to jump up and try to address it. Now, there are three problems with the student loan crisis as it sits. The first thing we need to address is the fact that these loans can never be forgiven in bankruptcy, which has led lenders, some of which are above board and some of which are just a little bit shadier out there, to come back out and say, hey, you know what, here's a little bit more money. Hey, why don't you go and borrow a little bit more money here? It can never be forgiven in bankruptcy, so they get their money no matter what, and they can continue to call you and harass you until the day that you die, and once you die, then they go back and harass your family over the same thing. These lending companies, and a lot of them are private businesses right now, are coming out and giving out the money in loans because they know that no matter what, they're going to get that money back, and the federal government is backing them as well, so the federal government can come back and hold that down. The first thing that I would do under executive order would be to change the status to where these loans can be forgiven in bankruptcy. Now, a lot of people would come back and say and counter the fact that this would crash parts of the economy. And I don't think that it would, but one of the things that you would notice right away is all of a sudden you would have a lot of banks and lenders out there very, very eager to make a deal all of a sudden when for the last 20, 30 years, while they've been hounding these students, they haven't been willing to make a deal at all. They just come back out and say, oh no, you need to get your money here, otherwise we're going to ding your credit. We're not going to work with you at all. Just pay the money, pay the money. Oh, you don't have the job? We'll pay the money anyway. Oh, you're at an economic hardship? Pay the money anyway. Oh, you want to go buy that house? No, pay the money anyway. It would give an incentive for the banks and the student to work together. Now, of course, a lot of the students would come back out and file that out in bankruptcy, and they would restructure themselves, and they would take a very, very hard credit ding because of it, but that would also leave the lenders in a position where they would not be giving their money back. Now, the second plank of the plan that I have to address this student loan crisis deals with the amount of interest that's hanging out there. And I've thought a lot about this. This has been the biggest sticking point with me because with the deferments that were involved, because none of these things could be forgiven in bankruptcy, so sometimes the banks would make a deal with the students to say, hey, okay, we'll give you 6 months to go back and redo your finances. And now students have done this for 5, 10, 15 years, and that $5,000 student loan that they have has now $15,000 worth of interest back on there. And my initial thought with this was to go back and set all of the interest back to zero, let the loans be nothing but principal at this point, and then just walk away from it and let everybody go back about their business. But one of the big problems with forgiving all the student loan right now is the fact that it does punish the people who were responsible and paid it off. So I've taken two parts to this part of the plan. First, I would work with all the banks, especially because they are backed by federal money right now, and say, okay, well, we're going to do this as a temporary one-time thing, and for right now, everybody's interest is gone, and all of your loans are set back to your initial principal. You will start accruing interest once again, so you better get right on your toes and start paying this, but as for right now, you get this one-time forgiveness. The banks still make their money throughout all of this. They still have the money to come back and pay people. And the students do get some relief after interest is compounding and compounding and compounding. But I want to take this just a step further because I also want to look at the people who were responsible and paying off their student loans and paying off their student debt and paying all the interest on that. So I wouldn't go back and initially insist that the banks and lending institutions give back all the interest payments that they made. That would be asinine. But I thought about this a lot more, and I realized that there is a way to stimulate the economy, get some of that interest money back into the hands of the people who were responsible, and still not crash the banking industry or that sector of the economy as well. Under my plan, the people who have paid off either large portions of their student debt or the student debt entirely would have the opportunity to go back to their accountant, an accountant of their choice, or find a new accountant to go with, and have their student loan payments analyzed to see exactly how much they paid in interest over the years. And on their next tax filing, they would be able to file that student loan interest with their taxes in order to get a 10% rebate on their taxes in the amount of their interest back from their taxes every year for 10 years. The basis of this plan is very simple. It gives the American people who were responsible a nice long tax holiday for 10 years where they're getting more and more back out of their taxes, and they're going back and they're turning around and they're spending it back into the economy. A little bit of extra money in everybody's pocket stimulates the economy left and right. They can go and do a home improvement. They can put a down payment on a new car. They can maybe go out and buy a new house. They can maybe go out and get a better apartment just on that one payment that they get back every year. It goes with the same thing with people who bank on getting a big tax refund back every year. Yes, I disagree with the fact that they're paying in, but they get the tax refund and they go back out and they spend it back in the economy. They do improve their lives, which does trickle down through the rest of the economy, the rest of the service sector, the automotive sector. The orders for new cars go up, the orders for new houses go up. And honestly, I think that would be the best way to reward the people who were responsible throughout this entire thing while still addressing the crisis that's at hand. The last step in my plan to address the student loan crisis involves the creditworthiness of the people who are struggling with student loan debt, because just like with any other debt, if you miss a payment or two, all of a sudden your credit has gone straight into the toilet, and it's really hard to come back out of that once you're there. And of course, this step is purely speculative because there's no way of predicting how the students would react if they suddenly had great credit, but I look at the way that some people spend and some of the options that would be on the table for people if they had better credit in addressing their own personal student loan crises. And I think that that would be the best way to do that. So if I was the president and addressing the student loan crisis, I would also give a one-time forgiveness on penalties from missed payments for student loans. I would go to the credit bureaus and say, okay, this only applies to the student loan payments. I mean, it's not going to be with anything else, but we will strike those from the records of all of the credit bureaus and see where people's credit line up. Now, some of these kids will go out and they'll buy houses. And with any luck, at some point when they buy the house, they'll take a little bit of extra money out against the house and use it on the student loan payment. I know that's one of the things that I had thought about doing when I was in the process of buying property for myself, was paying for a year and then borrowing a little bit more against the house and paying off the student debt with it. It's a much lower interest rate. It's stretched out over a few more years, plus with any luck, your property's built value while you're living in it and while you're using it. So, and once again, people can go out and refinance, go with a different bank if they're having problems with the bank that they're working with. It won't be a federally secured loan anymore, but they can go back and refinance that elsewhere, put it against a car, put it against a house. There are a myriad of other options that people could do. Now, this would be a one-time thing, and your next missed payment, that's going to be another ding against your credit. But to give people that one chance at forgiveness to come back out and see if they can restructure their lives would possibly go a very, very long way in helping to solve the student debt crisis. Predicting how the market would react to such changes is very difficult to ascertain, especially given the fact that a lot of the people who are struggling in the student debt crisis have been promised free stuff for 15 years at this point, just free money to go to college with. But in all honesty, without tanking the markets, I looked at this and I feel that this is probably the best way to address this and still make sure that everybody gets the money paid that they are due, because these kids did sign on a line saying that they would pay back the loans. But I want to know what you guys think, so leave a comment in the comment section below, or leave me a message over. I'm still on Twitter, even though I really don't want to promote them. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Or you can find me over on Parler at EdsBlog Parlay. You can find the Discord or the Gilded linked in the description below. Let's have the conversation about this. And as always, remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care.
You're always there.